Hello everyone, welcome. This is the second video in my series on early keyboard fingering, and today we're just going to cover what sources are out there, both primary and secondary sources. So at any point, you're welcome to pause the video and maybe purchase some of these sources or look for them online. Um, if you're interested in early keyboard fingering, I would definitely recommend that you get at least some of these. So let's start talking about them. Our first primary source is CPE Bach's Versuch über die Art, das Klavier zu spielen, which means the essay on the true art of playing the keyboard. And just recently, a modern translation by Tobias Playbuch and Derek Remisch came out, and it's available here at this URL, versuch.cpebach.org/app/index.html. You don't have to buy anything, you can just go to the website and click through the book. It's a great resource. Before that, there was an English edition published in the 1940s, I believe, by William J. Mitchell, which you can still purchase if you want a hard copy. Now, this book's kind of a progressive book, meaning that C.P. Bach in this book is advancing more modern practices, such as tucking under the thumb, more extensive use of the thumb. But he still does cover in his scale and chord fingerings, for instance, a lot of the older practice of the Baroque. So it's still a useful resource. And I'd say this is representative of the late Baroque style, early classical style around Central and North Germany. Next, we have Francois Couperin, L'Art toucher le clavecin, which is the art of playing the harpsichord. And if you search this title onto imslp.org, you can actually find a trilingual French, German, English edition published by Breitkopf. And this is representative of French Baroque practice. A really good resource, lots of musical examples with finger indications given. Next we have Tomás de Santa Maria, Arte de Tañer Fantasia, in 1565, and the title means the art of playing the fantasia. And this is representative of late Renaissance Spanish practice. This is a very extensive book. It's the sections on the fingering practice is only a small part of it. It's also about improvisation in general, music theory. If you're interested in solmization or improvising canons, all sorts of stuff. It's a really great book. We have Girolamo di Ruta, sorry, Il Transilvano, from 1593, which means the Transylvanian, or the one from across the forest. And this is representative of late Renaissance Italian practice. The form of this book is like a dialogue. Someone from across the forest goes and travels down to Italy, seeks out a teacher, and the the teacher explains him, in like a Socratic dialogue kind of manner, asking questions, getting answers, and teaches him how to play keyboard. And I believe this is the last of our primary sources, the Klavierbuchlein for Wilhelm Friedemann Bach, which means the little notebook, little keyboard notebook for Wilhelm Friedemann Bach. And so the pieces in here are primarily by J.S. Bach, but I think people think some of them have been worked on by Wilhelm Friedemann Bach too, maybe revised by his father. And importantly, this contains a couple of pieces of music that have finger indications. There's a prelude in G minor that has finger indications by J.S. Bach, and there is the Applicatio in C major, the first piece there, which demonstrates some paired fingerings. So the issue that we have with primary sources um, is that not a lot of people played instruments professionally in the Baroque era, and these kinds of method books were not very commonly written. I think they were generally taught from master to student, and they didn't really have a need to write it down. They weren't teaching the masses this kind of stuff. So few sources survive. It was not very common to write down finger indications in general. The second half of the 18th century, things start to change. The the courts, the royalty, get a more reduced role in terms of supporting the arts, and the middle class starts becoming more of a patron of the arts. And at this point, there's a lot more popular demand for things like treatises and how to play keyboard and how to teach yourself. So that's when you get a lot more treatises. And if you compare, we're not covering the 19th century, for example, but if you compare this the 19th century to the 18th century, you can see there's way more in all sorts of languages written in the 19th century, like piano methods, but not a lot in the 18th century. So this means is that we kind of have to deduce the techniques of the Baroque players. What I wrote here is the fathers from the sons, which is going to be more high classical authors when that demand is increasing. So next, we're going to have a list of secondary sources. The first one, Historical Performance Practice in Organ Playing, Volume 1. And this is about the Baroque and Classical periods by Jan Laukvik. This is a really good book. I'm reading it right now. It's very detailed. It goes into um, all sorts of stuff, really. It's probably the most extensive, most useful book on this list. Covers both fingering and pedal technique, which is nice. It talks about articulation, poetic meters, ornamentation, all sorts of stuff. Highly recommend it. Then there's Organ Technique, Modern and Early by George Ritchie and George Stauffer. This is also quite good. I haven't worked through it myself yet, but I do have it. First half of the book is modern technique, and then in the second half it introduces early technique. I would say if you're more of a beginner to early technique, this is going to be more approachable than the Laukvik book above. Has more of more sort of beginner exercises, more approachable, bigger print. Next we have Harpsichord Method by Maria Boxall. And I haven't read this one too extensively, but it's a good little introduction to playing the harpsichord, introduces paired fingerings and such. Pretty practical. Then we have Method of Organ Playing. I own the 8th edition by Harold Gleason. It's primarily not about early keyboard technique, but it does have a nice chapter on early keyboard technique and a few little exercises about that. So it's worth a read, maybe not as your primary source for early keyboard technique, but it's a nice book. Then we have Baroque Keyboard Fingering, a Method by Claudio Di Veroli. This one is very extensive. It's mostly based on the Francois Couperin, L'Artificier de Clavecin, and it has lots of examples. He breaks it out into each individual chapter being about one specific technique, which is nice. So you can look into one individual technique, go to that chapter, see the musical examples and practice them. It's also split between left hand and right hand because left hand and right hand use different practices in Baroque keyboard fingering. So I do recommend this book. Next we have New Oxford Organ Method by Anna Marston Thomas and Frederick Stocken. This one's primarily just a modern organ method, but what's interesting about it is the first chapter starts you out with Baroque keyboard technique, and then it develops it into modern technique. So it's interesting. It's not the most extensive. I would mostly recommend it if you just need an organ method in general, but it does cover a little bit of early keyboard technique at the beginning, which is nice. Next we have JSBox Keyboard Technique by Quentin Faulkner. And this is like a survey or an anthology of a lot of the primary sources, the quotations regarding JSBox Keyboards technique, and it covers some of the few manuscripts that we have with his finger indications, and it talks about the keyboard technique of as it progressed into the classical period, like some quotations from Beethoven describing Mozart's playing, which is interesting. And at the end of the book, I believe he has a couple of J.S. Bach's chorale preludes, fingered and pedaled according to Baroque principles. So I would say this book is worth it if you are interested in getting it. Lastly, we have Bach and the Art of Improvisation by Pamela Ruiter Feenstra. And this book is primarily about improvisation, but the interesting thing about it is she stated in the introduction to this book that she did a sort of A/B study with some of her classes and found that the ones who learned Baroque fingering and articulation before improvisation ended up learning improvisation faster overall. So she structured this book in the same way. The first few chapters are just about Baroque articulation, Baroque fingering, and it's a great resource. I highly recommend it. So that's all. Hopefully, this is helpful if you're looking to get some more info on Baroque fingering. Thank you.